You know, living at the top of the world isn't a vacation. It's a daily battle against the altitude, the cold, and the isolation. For today's video, I'm going to count down 15 of the highest communities on the planet. Let's start with number 15, Lainkonada in Peru, life on the edge of the sky. High in the southern Peruvian Andes, at an elevation of over 16,000 feet or 5,100 meters, lies Lainkonada, the highest permanent settlement on Earth. There's no other city, town, or village with a year-round population that exists at such a staggering altitude. Here above the tree line, beyond most forms of agriculture, nearly 3 miles above sea level, thousands of people work, live, and endure conditions so extreme that few outsiders can last more than a few days. It's a raw, chaotic, and a difficult place, but it is very real. And what keeps it alive, what brought people here in the first place, is gold. Lainkonada sits in the shadow of a massive glacier. This town rapidly grew in the late 1990s and early 2000s when informal mining boomed across this area and gold prices surged globally. The promise of riches attracted thousands of peoples, miners, families, vendors, and opportunists, many of whom arrived with little more than a backpack and a dream. Today, the population is estimated to be between 30 to 50,000 people, though it fluctuates and it's difficult to census due to the informal nature of the settlement. Electricity is inconsistent here, roads are often impassable, and sewage systems are mostly non-existent. Yet despite all this, the town continues to grow, driven by a singular economic engine, the gold mines. Now, mining here is done through a combination of formal and informal operations, many of which use the cachorrero system. Now, this is a controversial arrangement where miners work unpaid for 30 days, and then on the 31st day, they're allowed to take home whatever gold ore they can carry out themselves. Yeah, it's a gamble, and some strike it lucky, but most don't. But the lure of even a small score, just a few grams of gold, can represent a life-changing sum in a country where many rural workers live on just a few dollars a day. But despite the hardships, it has all the hallmarks of a real community. There's markets, bars, churches, and even beauty salons. Children play soccer on flattened gravel lots, and street vendors sell soup, rice, and cocoa leaves. And yet, the people stay here, not because it's easy or even particularly stable, but because of hope. The hope of gold, the hope of a future, the hope that life at the edge of the sky can still offer a foothold for prosperity. It's not just the highest community on the planet, it's also one of the most extraordinary. Number 14, Gathadzong in Bhutan, the fortress in the clouds. So way up there in the far north of Bhutan, just below the Tibetan border, is a solitary cluster of whitewashed buildings. This is Gathadzong, a sparsely populated region known for its high-altitude pastures, hot springs, and remote mountain trails. At an elevation of 9,400 feet, that's about 2,800 meters, it's not the highest community on this list by altitude, but in terms of isolation and year-round habitation in extreme terrain, it more than earns its place. More importantly, it's not just a village, it is a functioning district capital. It's home to Bhutanese civil servants, monastic institutions, and a small but resilient population that lives permanently in the clouds. Now, the term dzong in Bhutan refers to fortress monasteries that serve both administrative and spiritual purposes. Gathadzong, formerly named Tashi Tongmondzong, was built in the 17th century under the orders of Namgyal, the unifier of Bhutan. Its location was strategic. It's perched at the edge of a high ridge with amazing views of the surrounding valleys. And it served as a frontier watchpost and a vital node in Bhutan's defense system against Tibetan incursions. Now, Gaza's climate is harsh, even by Himalayan standards. Winter temperatures regularly drop below -10°C and snow can fall for days. There is no urban infrastructure here. Houses are made of stone, timber, and mud with tin roofs and small solar panels. Wood is harvested from nearby forests for heat, and water comes from mountain springs. A small primary school operates with fewer than 50 students, and a basic health unit provides first aid. In recent years, though, Bhutan's government has attempted to develop an eco-tourism here, promoting trekking routes to Laya, another high-altitude village, and to nearby hot springs that bubble from the rock at over 8,200 feet up. But development here is intentionally limited. This means Gaza's quiet, high-altitude existence is likely to remain unchanged for years. In a world increasingly defined by technology and speed, Gathadzong is an anomaly. It's a place where life unfolds slowly, reverently, and seasonally at the top of the world. For the few who live there, it's not adventure or a destination. It's just home. Number 13. Elaguar, Argentina, the high-altitude mining community in the clouds. In the Andes Mountains of northern Argentina is Elaguar, a remote mining town perched at an altitude of about 12,300 feet or 3,700 meters above sea level. It's not a tourist stop or a seasonal base camp. It's a functioning town with homes, schools, and medical facilities. It's got a resilient population living year-round in an environment where the sky feels impossibly close, and every breath reminds you of just how thin the air is. Elaguar was established in the early 20th century. It was officially founded in 1929 to support one of Argentina's richest zinc and lead deposits. The Aguiar mine is the beating heart of the town, providing employment, infrastructure, and the core reason this settlement exists in such a location. From the moment you arrive here, the altitude hits you. Breathing becomes slower, shallower, and physical exertion, even something as simple as climbing stairs or carrying groceries, demands more energy. Visitors often need 2 or 3 days to acclimatize, and many suffer from soroche or altitude sickness. But the people who live here are just used to it. Their bodies have adapted, and their lives have adjusted to a rhythm dictated by the elevation. The community here is a population of about 3,000 people, most of whom are either employed by the mine or support services such as healthcare, education, logistics, or administration. Elaguar is not a place of casual luxury, but it does offer comfort in its own way. There's sports courts, a cinema, a community center, even cultural exchange events throughout the year. Local festivals blend indigenous Andean traditions with modern Argentine customs. But perhaps the most remarkable feature here is how normal life can seem in such an abnormal environment. Children go to school, families gather for weekend barbecues, and friends meet in the plaza, talk, and watch the stars. Of course, the challenges are very real. Medical emergencies require stabilization before transport. High winds and snow in the winter months can cut off access entirely for days, and supply chains are fragile. Still, Elaguar endures. This place is an example of human adaptability, industrial persistence, and the remarkable capacity of communities to thrive far beyond the comfort zones of sea-level civilization. Number 12. Twiwa Tibet. On the Tibetan plateau, where the air is razor-thin and the horizon seems to stretch onto infinity, lies a tiny village known as Twiwa. It's often cited as the highest permanently inhabited settlement in the world. It's at an altitude of about 16,600 feet or over 5,000 meters above sea level. Now, this is not a mining town, nor a scientific outpost, nor a military installation. It's a traditional pastoral community, a cluster of simple homes, a monastery, and a few dozen hardy people who live in one of the most extreme environments. Every aspect of life here is shaped by the altitude. The air contains less than half the oxygen of sea-level environments, and crops can't grow, and the growing season is virtually non-existent due to permafrost. Water has to be drawn from glacial runoff or shallow springs. Food, tools, clothing, and medicine are either locally produced or brought in from distant trading posts. And daily routines are physically demanding. Herds have to be tended, fires must be constantly fed, and the altitude makes every chore slower and heavier. But despite its isolation, Twiwa has drawn attention from anthropologists, journalists, and even adventure travelers seeking to understand how life is possible here at this altitude. Researchers have studied the unique genetic adaptations of these peoples, such as increased nitric oxide levels, higher resting respiration rates, and specialized hemoglobin production. All this allows them to survive in hypoxic environments. Yet life here moves slowly. There's no stores, no restaurant, no cars. Life is conducted largely on foot or horseback. Decisions are made communally, often in the monastery courtyard or over shared meals. Twiwa does not grow, it doesn't expand, but it just persists. And in doing so, it represents perhaps the most extreme example of human endurance on the planet. It's not just a village in the clouds, it's a statement that even here, at the very threshold of habitability, can people still form community, culture, and meaning. Number 11. Alma, Colorado, the highest incorporated municipality in the U.S. Just south of Breckenridge and north of Fairplay lies the modest yet remarkable community of Alma, Colorado. At an elevation of over 10,000 feet or 3,200 meters above sea level, it holds the distinction of being the highest incorporated municipality in the U.S., with a year-round population and an active local government. It's not a ski resort, it's not a ghost town. It's a functioning high-altitude town, and life here is as high, cold, and thin as the air gets in North America. With a population of around 270, Alma is a quiet mountain town in Park County that's remained largely unchanged since the silver boom in the mid-1800s. Once a raucous mining hub with thousands of prospectors combing the slopes for gold, silver, lead, and zinc, it was incorporated in 1873. But Alma isn't just surviving here, it's thriving in its own quiet way. Its economy, while small, is diverse for such a remote location, and many residents work in nearby Breckenridge, commuting over the Hoosier Pass, which itself is one of the highest paved roads in North America. The town's elevation affects more than just respiration up here. Construction vehicles require special materials and methods due to permafrost and rapid temp swings, and vehicles have to be winterized to handle the extended exposure. But despite the challenges, Alma is beloved by its residents. Community events like the Festival in the Clouds, a local arts and music gathering held every summer, showcase the town's sense of togetherness and creative spirit. Still though, people choose Alma for its peace, for its views, and for its rare combination of rugged survivalism and community charm. Life here is a quiet assertion of independence, a daily negotiation with the thin air and long winters. Alma is not easy to live in, but it is undeniably alive. Number 10. Wen Kuan in Tibet. Close to the border with Xinjiang, not far from the source of the Yangtze River, is a small settlement with a fittingly stark name, Wen Kuan, meaning hot spring in Mandarin. It sits at an elevation of over 15,900 feet, or about 4,800 meters above sea level, and it's not only one of the highest inhabited places in the world, it's also the highest administrative village in China. The population is estimated to be about 200 people or less, primarily Tibetan nomadic families, and a roster of government personnel tasked with monitoring the border and maintaining infrastructure. It sits right near the Qinghai-Tibet Highway. It's one of the highest and most remarkable engineering feats. It's also along the route of the Qinghai-Tibet Railway, the world's highest railway line. These links make it accessible, but not really comfortable. Arriving here even by train still means stepping into a world where oxygen levels are roughly 50% those at sea level. Houses here are built to endure and insulate. Most are low to the ground, square-shaped, and constructed with stone and mud brick. Electricity here is intermittent, provided by a combination of small diesel generators and solar panels, and the government's made efforts in recent years to support high-altitude communities like this one with modest infrastructure improvements, better insulation, improved water access, and basic healthcare clinics. The future of Wen Kuan is uncertain, not because of decline, but because of its fragile ecological balance. Environmental change threatens to alter grazing patterns, freeze cycles, and water availability. State infrastructure projects like this one, while beneficial in some respects, also challenge the traditional rhythms of the nomadic lifestyle. Yet for now, Wen Kuan remains a living example of what's possible at nearly 16,000 feet, all held together in a place that few would choose, but where few truly belong. Number 9. Perina, Chile. At the northernmost tip of Chile, where the borders of Bolivia and Peru nearly touch, a small Andean community rises among ancient volcanoes. This is Perina, a village that rises 14,000 feet or 4,300 meters above sea level. It's both a village and a symbol, a place where culture and ecology converge at extreme altitude. With a population that fluctuates between 100 and 200 people, it is one of the highest continually inhabited settlements in South America. Now, the most dominant features of the landscape here are the volcanoes, twin snow-capped giants that loom over the village like frozen gods. In fact, the name Perina is derived from the Aymara language meaning flamingo lake, a reference to the highland wetlands here that these pink birds gather at impossible altitudes. Life here is dominated by the rhythms of the high-altitude existence. Days begin early, the sun burns brightly but gives little warmth, and temperatures can swing by 40 degrees Fahrenheit in a single day. But the economic backbone of the community is herding here, especially llamas and alpacas. These animals are central to their culture, not just economically but spiritually. Wool is woven into textiles using traditional looms, and meat and hides are preserved or traded in nearby towns. Education here is basic. A small schoolhouse offers some primary education, but older children are sent elsewhere for secondary studies. Some return, many don't. Tourism is growing, but it's a delicate part of life here. Hikers and photographers come for the views, but few stay long. Many suffer from altitude sickness, and the town remains wary of becoming too commercial. In many ways, this place is timeless. It's a place where llamas graze under the shadow of volcanoes, where stone houses resist time, and where every breath feels like a privilege won through endurance. It's remote but rooted, humble but proud. Number 8. La Paz, Bolivia, the world's tallest capital. La Paz is unlike any other capital on Earth. It's in a bowl-shaped canyon surrounded by towering mountains, at an elevation that ranges from 10,500 feet to over 13,300 feet in the upper districts. This vertical sprawl makes La Paz the highest capital city in the world, a pulsing metropolis, inhabitants that living and working at altitudes where many visitors struggle to even breathe. Now, the geography is staggering. The city's carved into the sides of a steep canyon that drops nearly 1,000 feet from its highest neighborhoods to the base of the Central Valley. The nearby mountain Illimani, a 21,000-foot peak, looms on the horizon like a watchful deity. Streets wind sharply down slopes and entire neighborhoods cling to cliffs. Housing here in La Paz reflects the verticality of it, like Zona Sur are paradoxically located at the lowest part of the city where oxygen is richer and the climate more temperate. Poorer communities, including indigenous Aymara families, tend to live in El Alto, the sprawling upper city that sits even higher than La Paz proper at more than 13,600 feet. The altitude, of course, brings challenges. Infrastructure wears out faster due to temperature extremes, water shortages are a recurring issue, medical emergencies, especially heart and lung conditions, are more difficult to treat at elevation, and environmental changes visibly affecting the glacial melt that once supplied the city's reservoirs. La Paz is not merely the highest capital in the world, it's one of the most vertical, layered, and vividly alive cities on Earth, proof that elevation, far from being a limitation, can become the foundation for something extraordinary. Moving on to number 7, Shingo, India. At an altitude of around 14,500 feet or about 4,400 meters, in the Himalayas lies Shingo, one of India's highest and most isolated villages. Unlike many other high-elevation communities that owe their existence to mining, military, or tourism, Shingo is purely pastoral and agricultural. Its inhabitants, fewer than 200 in total, are mostly Brokpas, an ethnic group descended from Indo-Aryan tribes believed to have migrated into the region thousands of years ago. Now, Shingo lies on the line of control between India and Pakistan, and though the area has seen occasional military tension, the village itself remains quiet. The elevation here is punishing. Oxygen levels are about 60% that of sea level, and the harsh climate and high UV radiation means that crops are limited to barley, peas, and hardy root vegetables. Livestock, especially yaks and goats, play a central role in village life, providing milk, meat, wool, and fertilizer. Cultural traditions here are preserved with pride. The Brokpas celebrate Bon and Buddhist festivals. They dance in hand-woven clothing and practice age-old customs of oral storytelling, herbal medicine, and astrology. Elders here are revered. Children are taught local dialects and encouraged to marry within the community to preserve lineage. Every family contributes to the village's survival through shared labor, rotating livestock grazing, communal harvests, and seasonal rituals. When a roof collapses here, the village repairs it. When snow falls too fast, they dig paths together. Shingo's residents do not see themselves as poor or unlucky. They see themselves as stewards of a sacred landscape, and in their high-altitude lives, cold, hard, thin, but deeply human, they represent one of the last threads connecting modern India to its ancient cloud-bound roots. Number 6. Chvet, Peru. In the Peruvian Andes, at an elevation of about 12,000 feet or 3,600 meters, is the mountain town of Chvet, a community perched on the rim of Coca Canyon, one of the deepest canyons in the world. Though not as high as some of the Himalayan or Tibetan settlements, Chvet earns its place on this list by the virtue of its altitude, year-round population, and cultural economic role in one of the most remote regions of South America. Chvet is the capital of the Calioma province, and with a population of about 5,000, it's a lively town built upon thousands of years of Quechua and Inca history. It's not just a stopping point on the way to the canyon, it is a genuine Andean hub where local traditions and modern functionality intersect. The town layout reflects colonial influence overlaid on Incan foundations. The Plaza de Arma features a 16th century church, while cobbled streets branch out into the neighborhoods. Women in brightly embroidered dresses called poleras walk with their children in tow, while elders sit beneath the shaded trees, sorting herbs or sewing by hand. The climate here can be pretty extreme. Days can be sunny and warm, with UV rays strong enough to burn in minutes, and rainfall is highly seasonal, and water management is a critical part of local life here. Cultural life is pretty vibrant. The Wititi Festival, designated as an intangible cultural heritage by UNESCO, features colorful dances, musical performances, and rituals of fertility and abundance. Chvet is also home to the La Calera hot springs, located just outside town. These geothermally heated pools offer not only relaxation, but also important therapeutic value for residents suffering from high-altitude ailments. The sense of pride here is palpable. Despite its elevation and rugged geography, it's not a forgotten place. It's a vibrant, functioning town where ancient agriculture, colonial architecture, and modern enterprise coexist at high altitude. Here, the air is thin, but the community is rich. Chvet proves that elevation does not diminish civilization, it just refines it. Number 5. Carach in India. At an altitude of over 14,800 feet or 4,500 meters above sea level, it may be small in population, fewer than 200 people, but Carach stands as an example of human resilience, existing year-round in one of the most remote corners of the Earth. Carach is part of the Changtang Plateau, a vast highland region shared by India and Tibet. Now, the name Changtang means northern plain in Tibetan, but this is no flat land. Elevations here rarely dip below 14,000 feet. Oxygen levels are about 60% of sea level, making every physical task more difficult. Buddhist monks and yak herders whose lives are inextricably linked to the land. But despite the conditions here, Carach has thrived for centuries, home to a community of Changpa nomads, Buddhist monks, and yak herders. The crown jewel is a monastery, a 300-year-old Drukpa Buddhist institution perched on the rise above the village. A modest yet beautiful structure, central to the community's spiritual and cultural life. The annual festival here, celebrated in summer, draws visitors and pilgrims from across Ladakh. Winters here are pretty brutal. Temperatures regularly drop below -20 degrees Celsius, and snow can bury the village for months. During these months, families rely on preserved food, yak dung for fuel, and tight-knit community cooperation. Schooling is suspended in the coldest periods, though basic education is provided when possible. Economically, the people here rely heavily on pastoralism. Their prized resource is pashmina wool, derived from the undercoat of a specific breed of high-altitude goat. Pashmina herding is labor-intensive, but remains one of the most lucrative activities. Visitors here are few, but they're increasing. Trekking and ecotourism are promoted cautiously, and homestays and local guides offer insight into the culture. But infrastructure here is deliberately limited to protect the environment. But what makes this place extraordinary is the deliberate balance it maintains between old and new, tradition and adaptation. This is not a forgotten or frozen-in-time village. It is a living, breathing example of how a community can thrive where most would falter. Carach teaches that human life is not bound by sea level. It reminds us that there are places where the land is sparse, the sky is close, and yet family, faith, and survival still find a way. Number 4. Potosí in Bolivia. At an elevation of over 13,400 feet or over 4,000 meters, Potosí is one of the highest cities on the planet, and certainly one of the most historically significant among them. Once the richest city in the Americas, Potosí's name became synonymous with wealth during the Spanish colonial era, fueled by vast silver reserves extracted from the rich mountain or Cerro Rico, which still dominates the skyline. Potosí's story is not just about its history, though. It's still very much a living city, home to over 200,000 people who reside year-round. Walking through Potosí is an experience in altitude and contradiction. The thin air slows you down, even as the streets bustle with energy. Historic colonial buildings line the city center, churches, mansions, and plazas bearing Spanish Baroque architecture. Yet Potosí is more than its mining industry. It's got universities, schools, hospitals, markets, and museums, and the city's well connected to road by Sucre and other parts of Bolivia. But its altitude, once considered a challenge, has been adapted to in everyday life. The climate is dry and cool, with brilliant sun during the day and cold nights. Agriculture is limited due to the elevation, but the surrounding valleys do produce potatoes, quinoa, and herbs. Tourism here is significant, but doesn't overwhelm the city. Visitors come to tour the mines, walk the historic center, that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and climb Cerro Rico. Many struggle with the elevation, though. Headaches, nausea, and fatigue are pretty common. But Potosí's charm lies in how completely normal life is for those who live here. Potosi isn't just high, it's layered. It's elevation with history, it's altitude with culture, and it's a city where the air is thin but the sense of place is rich. To live here is to carry a weight of legacy, of altitude and survival. But it's also to stand on ground that has shaped nations and to breathe in the thinnest air with the fullest sense of identity. Number 3. Laya in Bhutan. In the highlands of Bhutan, beyond the reach of roads and far away from the modern pulse of cities like Paro, lies one of the most isolated communities. At an elevation of over 12,000 feet above sea level, and with surrounding ridgelines rising even higher, this is not just a high permanent settlement, it's a living pocket of ancient culture. To reach it is no small feat. There's no direct roads, there's no airports, and no easy access points. The journey begins with a drive from Bhutan's capital, Thimphu, and the end of a winding road near Gathadzong, followed by a 2-day trek through alpine forests and glacial rivers. But for the people who call Laya home, this is not a journey, it's just simply life. Laya is part of the Gasa district, in the heart of a national park, one of Bhutan's most ecologically diverse regions. The village is accessible only by foot or by hoof, and its isolation has helped preserve a way of life that feels to outsiders like stepping into another era. The climate here is pretty severe. Winters are long and bitter, temperatures frequently plunging below negative 15 degrees Celsius or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And the growing season's only a few months long, and agriculture is nearly impossible at this altitude. The backbone here of their economy is yak herding, supplemented by the collection of a rare and highly valuable fungus known as Cordyceps sinensis. This is a parasitic organism that grows out of caterpillar larvae and is prized in traditional Chinese medicine. Still though, the way of life here remains traditional and semi-nomadic. In winter, families stay close to their home compounds, tending to the animals and maintaining trails and fences. In summer, they move to the grazing camps, living in their yak-haired tents and rotating through pastures that have been used for generations. The most iconic symbol of their culture is the layap hat, worn by women, black, conical, and adorned with a long tail-like tassel. These hats are part of everyday attire, paired with striped wooden skirts and heavy shawls. Festivals are celebrated with masked dances, yak races, and competitions in traditional sports like archery and stone throwing. But life in Laya is changing. Satellite internet has begun to arrive in places. Solar panels, once rare, are now pretty common, and a few villagers own mobile phones powered by solar chargers. Yet perhaps the most pressing challenge here is outmigration. Young people, exposed to education and glimpses of urban life, increasingly leave for big cities or abroad, and while some return, many don't. Elders worry about the continuity of traditions. Will yak herding survive? Will Laya become merely a seasonal outpost? For now, however, Laya endures. Every morning, smoke rises from the chimneys, yak bells ring as herds move along the hills, and children run barefoot through the snow. It's not a forgotten village. It's not a fossil of the past. It is a functioning, adapting, vibrant society that proves human beings can build not just survival, but cultural, ritual, and meaning at the very edge of what the earth allows. It's not a place most ever will visit, but it is a place that the world should remember. Number 2. Chanek and Ambaras, Ethiopia. The Simien Mountains. Within this range, at elevations approaching over 13,000 to 14,000 feet above sea level, are scattered permanent highland villages such as Chanek and Ambaras, small, resilient communities that defy climate and expectation. They're located in the Amhara region, within the broader boundaries of Simien Mountains National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Though the park is famous for its cliffs, endemic wildlife, and trekking routes, its true wonder lies in its people. Farmers and pastoralists who have lived, worked, and raised families here for generations at altitudes few outsiders can endure for more than a few days. The altitude itself is staggering, 3,600 meters, but it's surrounded by farmland and households that climb over 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet, higher than many European mountain peaks. Living here, of course, is not easy. The people of Chanek and Ambaras are predominantly Amhara Highlanders, though pockets of Agaw and Kamant ethnic groups also live nearby. Most families speak Amharic, the national language, but also preserve older dialects and oral traditions. The air is crisp and dry. Oxygen is roughly 60% of sea level concentration, and new visitors often experience altitude sickness. Agriculture is the backbone of life here. Despite the rocky terrain and the short growing seasons, farmers manage to coax staple crops like barley, wheat, teff, lentils, and broad beans from the soil. Water is usually sourced from mountain springs, though seasonal drying and deforestation have made water access a bit more difficult in recent years. Rain collection systems funded by NGOs have been implemented in some areas, while small footpaths lead to community springs. Education is improving, but it remains a challenge. Primary schools exist in larger villages like Ambaras, but often built from mud and corrugated tin. However, students have to walk hours, sometimes over 10 kilometers on foot to attend class, often barefoot. Healthcare is similarly limited. Health extension workers trained by the government offer vaccinations, malaria testing, and basic medical aid. Yet for all the hardships, life here continues, interdependent and rhythmic. The stories of Chanek and Ambaras are not widely known. They rarely appear in documentaries or news articles, but they represent something profound, Africa's highest human edge, where life continues not by conquering nature, but by adapting to its every breath. The altitude here is not merely physical, it is cultural, spiritual, and ancestral. To walk through these villages is to witness human beings living at the brink of the Earth's vertical limit, and doing so not with desperation, but with dignity. Number 1. Woolong China. Hidden in the mountains of western China near the Tibetan Plateau in the Sichuan province is a village that almost no one visits casually, and yet it plays a vital role in one of the world's most unique intersections of human settlement and conservation science. The village is called Woolong, located at elevations between 12,500 and 13,000 feet. Though Woolong is internationally recognized for its giant panda breeding centers, what is less well known is that it's also a functioning human village, an ancient settlement of ethnic Tibetans who live, work, and worship. This is not a temporary research base or a seasonal herder's outpost, it is a true community, one that's existed for generations in the shadow of jagged peaks, glacial waters, and tectonic instability. To understand Woolong is to understand what life is like at the edge of human endurance. This isn't Lainkonada's chaos or the pastoral stillness of Laya. This is something else. It's a fusion of old and new, tradition and research, prayer and data collection, yaks and Wi-Fi. It's an unlikely meeting point of two worlds, ancient Tibetan culture and 21st century conservation. But despite its remoteness, Woolong is not an isolated relic. It has changed, especially in recent decades. When the Chinese government began investing in panda conservation, the village found itself at the center of global scientific attention. The first Woolong Panda Research Center was established in the 1980s, and it quickly became the most important facility of its kind in the world. Scientists, volunteers, conservationists, and government officials began to cycle through the area with increasing regularity. Woolong is a living laboratory for environmental change, too. Scientists from around the world have come in to study how rising temperatures, shifting snowpack, and invasive species are affecting biodiversity in high-altitude systems. The villagers, who have an intimate relationship with the land, notice the changes, too. They speak of fewer snow leopards, warmer winters, and glacial rivers that run lower than before. The conservationists face their own challenges too. Despite success in breeding and releasing pandas, the broader goal, restoring the ecosystem balance, is far more complicated. Illegal logging, poaching, and overgrazing remain concerns, especially in the more remote parts of the reserve. As snow lines retreat and plant zones shift uphill, many species are being forced into shrinking habitats. Perhaps the most poetic feature of Woolong is the rhythm of life. Life moves slowly but purposefully. Roosters crow before the sun, smoke rises from chimneys as morning prayers begin. Children herd goats along narrow ridge lines, and in the distance a drone hums overhead, surveying forest cover. A monk chants by a riverside shrine. A biologist takes notes beneath an alpine forest. Two worlds orbit each other here, separate but inseparable. The people of Woolong have made peace with their altitude. They've found ways to build, raise, celebrate, and survive in a land that tests every breath. And through their resilience and alliance with science, they've helped build something more, an example of how the future can be shaped not through domination of nature, but through cooperation with it. In the end, Woolong is more than just one of the highest communities on Earth. It is a rare and precious collaboration between culture and conservation, between hardship and hope, between the sky and stone. And in that thin, cold air up there, life carries on, not in defiance of the mountain, but in quiet harmony with it.